I'm Les Williams, and in Vietnam I was known as Lieutenant Williams, and when I returned from Vietnam I was known as Captain Williams at Fort Belvoir. My tour in Vietnam actually started in college. In 1964, when I graduated from college, I had been an ROTC student, which stands for Reserve Officers Training Corps. So when I finished college in 1964, I graduated not only with a BS degree in math, but also with a second lieutenant commission in the U.S. Army. So I left the States from Oakland, California. I went to Anchorage, Alaska, then Hawaii, then Yokota, Japan, then Manila, and then into Saigon. And it was an equipment-bearing aircraft, so it was noisy and shaky, it was raining, and you can imagine the feeling that I had flying 300 miles north to find my unit. The experience of being a black officer, believe it or not, was no different than being a white officer or any color officer in the 60s. And that is because most of the troops that I had in Vietnam, most of the troops in my platoon, of the 18 men, I would say 75% were white. Every guy looked out for the next guy, black or white, or red or blue. The food was sea rations, and believe it or not, it was great. Little cans of meats, cans of vegetables. So look at sea rations as vegetables in a can, meat in a can, dessert in a can. So everything was in a very small can, and you could carry it in your hand. We ate them every day. There was no mess hall to speak of, so there was no hot food because you're out in the jungle. So therefore, sea rations was the food of the day. In October of '66, my mother died. I flew home for 30 days, went back to Vietnam, and continued my responsibilities. When I went back, the commander of my unit wanted me to be the adjutant of his command, which means that I would be on a helicopter going to the various units with him and writing about what they were doing. My most memorable moment of being in Vietnam was the children everywhere I went. Not only on the convoys to Saigon, but also when I went with the colonel up to other parts close to Saigon, like Bien Hoa Air Base, where all of the jets were that dropped bombs. So the kids were just like any other kid. We would throw candy to them, they would wave, and so that was a pretty sad time, was to look at the little children, because most of them were orphans, and who knows where they went once we disappeared. The one question that people always ask is, weren't you afraid to die? And the answer is, you don't think about it because you become part of the culture. If you took a trip to Europe and you stayed there long enough, you'd become like the Europeans already are. If you took it to Japan, you'd do what they do over time. So when you're in a war, when I sit here thinking about it, I think to myself, why would anyone want to go in a war? They'd be killed. But really, once you're there, you are part of the culture, and your job is to do it, and to do it without being killed. And yes, to kill the guy who wants to kill you. So it's an experience that no one should witness, but it's part of our Constitution. It's part of preserving our homeland. So I am glad that I went. It was an unforgettable war, but we were not forgotten because of the Vietnam Memorial that stands there with 53,000 dead, and I can go down to that wall and look at it and can thank the good Lord that I'm not one of them.